So what we're going to cover today is a little bit about the toolkit, basic health and safety requirements that each branch needs, whether you are associated, affiliated with a museum or other organisation, or whether you are a CBA run branch. Looking a little bit about what you need and when. We'll talk a little bit about risk benefit, and risk benefit is something I don't know if you have come across before at all, but we will talk a little bit about that. We'll introduce the revised session plan and risk benefit assessment plan form, look at what else is available in the toolkit, and then we'll spend some time thinking about how you might use the toolkit and training resources with other leaders, volunteers and members. So the toolkit is what is on the web pages. So it is a very as light touch information that you require as leaders for health and safety. And then we've added layers in there, whether that is training PowerPoints or template forms that you can use, which you use as much and as little as you require. Because we're very much aware that there are some people who are new leaders who haven't done this before, who might want a lot of guidance, as well as those of you who have really good reporting structures and forms and procedures in well-established courses. So everything has been designed to make it as easy as possible for you to do, if that's the form that you want to use. So why do we have health and safety requirements? So we protect them from harm, and also to protect ourselves from harm as well. And it's a legal requirement. We have a duty of care both to ourselves, to CBA, the parent body, to our members. We have a duty of care to look after everybody. And that's basically what it boils down to. And the essence of health and safety is this. It's about planning, organising, controlling, monitoring, reviewing and auditing. And it is a vicious circle. You go through this throughout the time. And this is the essence of the toolkit. The toolkit is there to help you with the planning, the organisation, and the control, the monitoring, and then to help you to review as well. So if you have processes in place already, it's worth looking at the toolkit just to look at whether or not you've covered everything. And there's some checklists on there, just if you are unsure of what you're doing or what should be in there, and so on. And there are some legislations that relate to all of this, whether that's the Health and Safety at Work Act, or Control of Substances Hazardous to Health. There are legislation that we have to go into, but we're not going to go into that much detail because you've all come from different aspects. You've probably covered so much of that in your day-to-day working lives, that we won't cover that. Thinking about the different elements of health and safety, the different elements of the Planning for Safety Toolkit that you might require. And I wondered at this point if you could tell me some of the activities that you do or have done in your club, in your activity sessions. So yes, so there's all sorts of things that you've all described there, and we've tried to cover quite a few of those things within the toolkit. So there's information there about manual handling that you can print off and share. There's information about food safety. So if you're doing any baking or thinking about having people bring their own snacks or having a party or with food involved, then you have that information there. And all you have to prove for HSE is if you're doing something that requires training, that you've provided training. If you do it on a regular basis and it's a requirement for your venue, you might look at doing additional training to get a certificate. But if you record the training and you show due diligence, then it covers you and safeguards yourselves with regard to your due diligence and your legal requirements, and also the insurance that is provided by CBA. So the requirements for all branches is that you have a session plan and a risk assessment for every session that you do. This hasn't changed. What we've done within the toolkit is actually, instead of having two separate documents, we've combined it into one document. And that way, we hope that it's easier for you. So I was just reading Joe's comment in the chat.
I didn't want to break your flow.
That's all right, please break. That's fine. And we do say in the toolkit as well that if you require additional training, to contact Joe and Rachel at YAC HQ and see what can be done. You need a minimum of 2 YAC leaders present at each session, plus additional adult support as required. And I believe the ratio is 1 to 8 according to your safeguarding. I'm looking at Joe there just to clarify. Yes. Yeah. It's your responsibility to make sure that there is a trained first aider at every session. And you need to know what to do in an emergency. Those are all requirements that have always been in place. And what we've tried to do is provide a little bit more guidance through the toolkit of what that actually looks like. What to do in an emergency, because knowing what to do in an emergency and having something written down can make it easier when you are in an emergent situation. Because if you have a vague idea and it's not written down, then that's where you get even more flustered than you already are, because you do start to feel panicky in an emergency. So all of that is in the toolkit as much as possible. And then the additional guidance is used where it is relevant to your branch's activities. And there may be things that you require in the toolkit because you are a CBA branch, that if you're an affiliated branch, you might not need. So you might not need your own emergency plan. For example, if you're in Pontefract Castle or Bolton Museum, because they will have their own. And that's what you will be asked to follow. We're going to have a look at what else is available in the toolkit now. So what we've suggested is that each branch creates a health and safety folder where you bring together everything. So you're not, so you have, it could be on a Google Drive. It could be on one person's computer. It's whatever works for you. And it is about making sure that the information is available when you need it and you're not scrambling around trying to find the information. So it should reflect your branch and your branch's needs. So there is on the website, there's further information and templates for all of this. So things like important contact details. The important contact details form is set up so you have ease of reach for Joe's contact details. It's somewhere that you can put each other's contact details for an emergency. It's somewhere that if you're working at someone else's venue and you need to get in touch with their maintenance team because of something requiring sorting out immediately because there's a water leak or whatever, you've got their contact details. You can also put things like your local police station or your local safeguarding board, because every single council in the UK has a safeguarding board. So if you have any concerns, you can contact them. So you can have all of that information in one place so that you're not frantically trying to scroll through someone's phone or whatever during an emergency. If you need that information, it's there for you. Session registers and membership and volunteer forms, they have been updated. The volunteer and membership forms have been updated on the website. So do make sure you're using those ones. The information hasn't changed though too much. There's just a little bit of tweaking of wording. It should also have your activity and session plans, risk benefit assessments in there, and your up-to-date venue assessment. And then if you use any chemicals or hazardous materials, just having a list of what you've got in stock, of what you're using. And there is further information on the website about chemicals and hazardous materials, and there's some example data sheets as well. That all chemicals in this country have to have a data sheet. They're freely available through manufacturers or on websites. Do a Google search and that will tell you what the hazards are and also what to do in an emergency. So if someone eats a lot of PVA glue, it will tell you what the first aid measures are. Not that anybody would. If you've got food safety, so if you do use food, what your food safety is, what your emergency procedures are, individual support plans, which we'll move on to, behavioural management. That hasn't been, that's still the same as it was, but it's worth having a look. And I know, talking to Joe, that you've done some work previously with another trainer around working with people who are neurodivergent as well. And then safeguarding, I'd keep that in the health and safety folder, but that's all in the safeguarding children portion of the website as well. So we've mentioned the venue assessments already. So, and this requirement hasn't changed. So you are required to send your venue assessment every year on an annual basis to YAC HQ for them to keep on record. So affiliated branches, you will probably have, if you work for a museum, you've probably got loads of paperwork that you have to do annually, 6 monthly, and so on. So that will be covered by then. If you're a CBA managed branch, it's your responsibility to do the venue risk assessment, and we have provided that template. Chemicals and hazardous materials. So this can be soap, washing up liquid, paint, varnish, you name it. We use a lot of chemicals that we don't necessarily perceive as hazardous materials within craft, and they are on the whole lower risk than anything else, because we usually buy low risk, child safe materials. So the 10 rules are on the website. So it is about reading labels and following instructions, including understanding the hazard pictograms. And we've put information on the website about what those pictograms actually mean. Choose items that are suitable for the job and the age and ability that you're working with. And many of the materials we use, so I'm just thinking of one activity that I've done, you know, making mosaics and using grout. It usually has suitable for ages 3+ or 8+, whatever it is. It normally has a notice on the label. Use protective equipment if required, so that could be gloves or aprons. One thing I will say is some people are particularly sensitive to different materials. So, you know, if someone has really sensitive skin, they might need gloves for working with air drying clay, whereas the majority of the children don't. So it's thinking about those individual needs as well. Only mix chemicals where there is a clear requirement for the activity. So science experiments, cyanotype, dyeing, or where clear instructions and guidance have been provided. Don't mix cleaning chemicals or other materials, because mixing chemicals can kill. I remember a situation at school where we had to be evacuated from the science block because we made chlorine gas somehow. I have no idea how, but it happened. Store all chemicals safely and where applicable out of reach of children, so cleaning chemicals, things like that. Most of this is common sense. You know, don't put chemicals into unmarked containers or containers that have other uses. Always label everything and label it as correctly and accurately as possible. Be sure that you know how to deal with spills, including first aid treatment and the correct disposal of any chemical material. Be aware of more hazardous materials that might be found in an archaeological excavation or in a historic artifact, and seek support. So, you know, you mentioned a museum store. I know that there's hazards in museum stores. Mostly gas masks and bits of old engines or scientific equipment have a lot of mercury or asbestos in them. Certain archaeological sites, if you know that they are from a specific period, you might already be aware that things are happening. If in doubt, talk to Joe and Rachel and ask, because there's probably someone in CBA who has a procedure or knowledge of this. Always follow the safety rules and develop safe working practices, and report anything wrong to each other as YAC leaders. And also if something happens, let Joe and Rachel know. Food safety. So does anyone provide snacks? Yeah. Do you have people who bring their own snacks or pack lunches? Do you host parties where people bring their own food? Do you provide historic food tasting, lead historic cooking activities? If yes to any of these, then you need to know about food safety. And allergens in particular. The law has changed around allergies because of the case of a couple of people who sadly had allergic reactions and died from eating at Pret. We have new legislation in this country, which is brilliant for people like me who have food allergies, because you have to know what the ingredients are. You have to be able to tell people what the ingredients are. If someone asks you for ingredients, you have to have that information. If you know someone has an allergy beforehand, you need to cater for that allergy by making sure that they know what is safe for them to eat or not eat. Now, you're not going to get everything. And you are not going to cover people who suddenly have an allergic reaction to something that they've never tried before or never had an allergic reaction to before. But that legislation has changed within the last 6 months, so it's worth being aware of that. Your emergency procedures should cover fire and evacuation. It should cover first aid, lost children, late collection. I've put public health incidents because you're well aware of all the COVID stuff that you've had to do. Also, severe and extreme weather. Now, this is something with climate change that we are going to have to become more and more aware of. We've had more flooding events in the UK. We've had more wildfires, and recently as well, which is quite early in the season for wildfires. We have had more storms. So Storm Eunice is one of the most recent ones. Being aware of severe and extreme weather events and planning for it. So if it's not safe, so you might be doing an indoor activity which is perfectly safe, but if it's gale force winds, you might want to think about, how are you getting? Is it safe for you to get to the venue? Is it safe for your members to get to the venue? Because you might decide at that point that actually you're going to cancel the session because people are driving through wooded areas to get to you, or whatever it is. It could be severe weather where you're planning an outdoor session and it is really, really hot and sunny. So actually, do you need to make sure that people bring sun protection and extra drinks? And if you're going to use suntan lotion, it is not classed as a medicine. It is not classed as first aid. So there is a model sunscreen permission slip under severe and extreme weather on the website if you want to use that. And that just gives permission for you to either reapply or to provide or to store sun cream lotion. Again, that's due to the fact there could be allergies rather than anything else. And then I've put in grey here, we've got a little bit of information in the toolkit about significant damage to YAC or venue property and criminal activity. I've put them in grey because they're the touchwood the least likely to happen. But if it does, there's information there for you, and there's incident forms as well on the website. So if you can fill in an incident form with as much detail as possible and then send it to Joe, because then YAC is aware of it, and if there's anything else, anything that YAC and CBA have to do to support you, they can do that as well. There's also individual support plans. So these have changed slightly. So previously they were just for EpiPens. So individual support plans, they're quite a lengthy document, but there's sections for different things. So you only have to give them the sections that apply to the member or volunteer. So this is for people who have a known allergy or medical condition or other support needs. So these are people you will be having conversations with anyway about how you can support them. And they are designed to be used when planning activities and sessions and in emergency situations. So there's a section in there. So if someone has seizures, you know, and it asks questions like, what type of, how long is an average seizure? You know, what is your average recovery time for a seizure? Because those are the things that you need to determine whether or not to call an ambulance. You know, and parents of members will give you really, really specific instructions regarding their members' needs. Now, they are confidential forms. However, like safeguarding, they are confidential up to the point of the people who need to know to be able to support that person or provide medical support. You have to share that information. So aspects of that information will need to be shared. So if you have to call an ambulance because someone has anaphylactic shock, you will give them the information that's in that pack. If you are, so if you've got someone with a known food allergy, for example, you are going to, and someone's planning an activity around creating food or eating food, you're going to give that information to the leader who is developing that activity to make sure that they get the right ingredients. So it is confidential up to the point where you need to use it for planning and in an emergency. And be transparent with the people who are giving you that information, and that is written in there as well. But be transparent that you will keep it confidential up to this point, and this information will be used in this way.